Welcome to the Founders and Family Business Network in Conversation series. Tell us a bit about UniLED. How is this business formed?
So I'd actually originally set out to go and work in the city. So I graduated from university, had studied finance and economics, but it was in 2008, just as the financial crisis hit. You know, Lehman Brothers, Northern Rock collapsed. And despite my degree and all of my work experience, I didn't as much as get an interview anywhere. So for kind of lack of a better idea, I started to work with my father, who had a handful of properties in and around London. But on one particular property, he had a billboard kind of on the side of the land. And I quickly realised that he's earning a greater income from the billboard than the property itself. And I was fascinated. I thought, this is what an interesting industry. So I started to look around to see if I could find sites where these billboards could go up. And I had zero luck. I didn't successfully get one site, but along that journey I was fortunate to meet a company who manufactured very large digital screens. And for me, the penny dropped that, all of these traditional billboards, these outdoor advertising billboards, will no doubt turn digital at some point in the future. And I was fortunate in that this company, they were actually based out in Israel. They didn't have a presence here in the UK, and for some reason asked me if I wanted to set up an office for them, which I grabbed with both hands. And I only worked for the company for, I think it was around 10 months. And during this time, I started to understand about digital screen technology, what software was required to kind of drive these screens. And probably most importantly, I realized that the clients that I was speaking to really didn't understand this technology. And that's when I kind of saw a gap in the market and thought to myself that I should set up a business to really provide consultancy services, to advise clients on screen technology. And so in 2010, UniLED was born.
Fantastic story. Obviously, challenging time when you were looking at going into potential financial services, no real opportunity. But for a lot of people, the decision to start a business can be viewed as equally risky. So just walk us through sort of the things that you experience in terms of the decision-making process in making that leap in terms of entrepreneurship.
It's a good question. I'd like to think that as much as I wanted to go and work in the financial services sector, I think I had a sprinkle of entrepreneurship in me. I mean, from a young age, I was selling laser pens to my friends at school and getting told off by the headmaster. I distinctly remember I had a good friend of mine who was a little bit older, and as soon as he got a car, we started doing car boot sales together. We ended up doing Wembley Market. So I think there was an element of me that always wanted to start and run my own business. And I think that because I was able to do that at quite a young age, I was able to take bigger risks. And again, I would love to say that I had this master plan when I set out the business. That absolutely wasn't the case. I think I saw an opportunity in a fairly niche market that I really truly believed was going to grow. And when you start, it purely is just trying to survive and trying to make something out of nothing.
Right.
Those challenges, of course, evolve as time goes by.
So what exactly is a UniLED proposition?
UniLED provides a range of products and services to the outdoor advertising market. And the outdoor advertising market, the landscape has changed drastically in recent years as a result of digitisation. Traditional static billboards have been digitised. And so UniLED, our purpose is to maximise the performance of these digital screens. And we do that via three main core products and services. So there's UniLED, which is our service division to provide monitoring and maintenance services. Then there's UniHub, which is our service management tool and reporting tool. And this is bespoke technology that we built to enable us to monitor these screens and report on screen health and performance. And then there's UniLive, which is our ad serving and verification platform, which ensures that the right creative is distributed to the right screen at the right time, and of course verifies and accounts that that ad did play when it was supposed to.
It's interesting, sort of the focus obviously on digital out of home in the current environment where we're talking about, quite frankly, over the past year, the ask of the population has been to stay home. Presumably that's had a material impact, not just on UniLED, but the industry at large.
Yes, you are absolutely right in that a national lockdown turns out is not good for outdoor advertising. From a market standpoint, I mean, in the UK, there's been a significant impact. You know, in 2020, the market was down 45%. Globally, the impact hasn't quite been that severe. I think for 2020 it was down 27%. But where there hasn't been ad spend, we certainly have seen shifts within the market. And what I mean by that is where there has been spend, for instance, a lot of that has been on digital as opposed to traditional panels. And the main driver behind that is the flexibility and short-term nature that you can kind of do with a digital panel.
Is the expectation, and from your point of view, that as lockdown eases, let's say in the UK, that things return to normal in terms of the trends that you would have seen pre-pandemic?
Let's take out of home pre-pandemic. It really was the place to be. Out of home was the only traditional medium to experience year-on-year growth. In fact, in 2019, it was the first time ever that out-of-home spend actually eclipsed print spend. Yes, the pandemic has had a significant effect, but if you look now already kind of as lockdown eases and restrictions ease, and all of the forecasts for out-of-home show a very, very strong recovery in 2021. And I think that recovery is, of course, going to be driven by audiences, but also be driven by the increased focus on the digitisation of assets and the growth of technology that has really come on leaps and bounds during the pandemic.
And realizing there was an opportunity, but presumably it could be solved by others as well, what would you say was a USP that you were thinking of in terms of UniLED? What would make it different than someone else doing something similar?
I initially set out the business as a consultancy business, and it was really to resolve a problem that I saw within the market. And that problem was that clients were trying to make procurement decisions and significant sums of money on purchasing these digital screens, but they really weren't educated as to the differences in the technology. And they would, from two manufacturers, have two different specification sheets for a particular product that looked identical, but product A is being charged at $10,000 a square meter and product B is $500 a square meter. But on the face of it, they look identical. And I don't think at the time when I set up UniLED, there was anybody else specifically advising on this technology and being able to help and guide potential clients as to kind of the minefield of the technology out there. So I think it was more finding an area whereby there was very little competition, in all honesty, and an area where I knew that there was a need and a demand because I'd seen it firsthand.
And so what would you say were some of the challenges that you faced when you were setting it up?
The first challenge is to create something, to gain traction, to gain momentum. In all honesty, it was probably a good 6-7 months before I had my first pound of revenue. And looking back now, I always remember, and it's a bit of a silly analogy, but I always assumed that the hardest part of running a business was starting it. And I use the analogy of a broken down car, right? If anyone's ever broken down before, they'll know that you kind of need to, there's a huge amount of energy to get the car moving initially. And then you kind of think to yourself, okay, well, when I've got it rolling and moving, it will be far easier. It turns out that, yes, that part is really difficult, but when you're then pushing this car, you realize quickly that this isn't sustainable. You can't just forever be pushing a car. You need an engine. And I suppose that challenge number 2 is about sustainability, right? And it's about bringing in people, forming processes and procedures so that it's not just you single-handedly driving the business. And then I look now and fast forward to today, and the problem is all around scalability. We've got this car, it's moving, but we need to figure out how to steer it, how to control the speed, how to refuel it we want to be somewhat comfortable while we're driving it. So there have been kind of an evolution of challenges throughout the journey.
Now, you mentioned people, which brings on to another point, which is culture. How would you describe the UniLED culture?
At this moment in time, I would say changing. We've had a very, very strong culture at UniLED since day one. And that culture has been driven by providing the best possible products and services to our clients, and really going above and beyond, not just for our clients, but for our teammates, for each other. And that dedication, that passion, that spirit has been really the sprinkle of magic that I believe has contributed the most to UniLED's success. But I say that it's changing because we've got the challenge now of two things that are changing. The first is growth, the change that we wanted. The culture that you have with 10, 15 people is completely different to the culture that you have with 60, 70 people. And the challenge of keeping that same ethos, keeping that same sprinkle of magic with 60, 70 people is difficult. And we are in the process of working out how to do that. Of course, the complexity is the challenge that we didn't want, which is working from home during this growth, which of course brings a whole new set of challenges. But I suppose our ambition is now to retain the culture and a sprinkle of the magic that kind of got us here as we scale and grow.
So in deciding you wanted to go out and get third-party funding, how did you make the decision and who you would partner with for that?
So we were looking for more than just a check, more than just funding. We wanted to find a partner that really understood our business, believed in our vision, believed in our team, and wanted to support us on our growth journey. And we were quite fortunate in the sense that we spoke to a number of institutions, and we had a fair amount of interest. We were very fortunate in that regard. But I think for us, Investec stood head and shoulders above because they really took the time to understand our business and understand our market. And in doing that, that's when they really started to believe in the vision, see for themselves the opportunity, and really be there to support us in achieving our goals and accomplishing that vision.
And it's an interesting point in terms of timing of funding, because you then get funded thinking about the opportunity and the pandemic hits.
Yes.
Now, how's the business evolved over the past year in sort of that dynamic where people are being asked to stay home?
You know, we saw it as an opportunity, in all honesty. Part of the reason for the funding, as I've talked about, given that we are a service and product business, was about resource. And certainly the advantages that we've taken as a result of the pandemic is the opportunity to really onboard some amazing resource that may have been let go at other organisations during this time. So I think from a revenue standpoint, no doubt the COVID has presented a whole bunch of challenges and created a whole bunch of pressure. But on the other hand, the fact that we haven't been so focused on delivering campaigns day to day, we have had the time, the funds, and the resource to be able to really lay some foundations so that when the market does recover, we are in an extremely strong position.
And from a recovery standpoint, what's your expectation sort of coming out of lockdown in terms of changes to the industry and maybe even the way UniLED does business?
I think from an industry standpoint, the digitisation of assets, the automation of technology is probably going to continue at an even quicker pace than it was before, pre-pandemic. We've seen how important flexibility is in out of home. Flexibility is only provided by digital screens. So if media owners continue to invest, which I'm sure they will, in the digitisation of assets, that is going to be an advantage for our industry and ultimately for UniLED. In the same way, in a post-pandemic world, brands are going to demand accountability and transparency for their advertising spend. And again, that's something that digitisation it enables and facilitates. We can be a lot more accountable on a digital panel than a static panel. And of course, we're building a suite of products and tools that deliver this to brands. So we feel very well placed in a post-COVID world to, as I said, capitalise on the opportunity.
And what do you see as a vision at the end of the day as an entrepreneur? What do you see as a vision for UniLED? We're talking post-pandemic. Where do you see UniLED?
Our ultimate vision, we would love to see every single digital out-of-home ad to be distributed and verified by our UniLive platform. It would also be great if every single one of these screens was being reported on by UniHub, our service management tool, and serviced by our UniLED service team. But is that possible? I believe so. I believe that we are at the forefront of a growing industry, and we are providing market-leading services and superior products to media owners and to brands, and we very much believe that vision can turn into a reality.
Because of the nature of our network being a founders and family business network, is there any advice you would give anyone who's thinking about going out in terms of starting a business today and taking into consideration the current environment as well?
Be prepared to redefine the term resilience would be the first thing. When many entrepreneurs and founders set out on a journey, there is a notion that you focus on all of the positives, the ability to be your own boss, be flexible, grow something, build something. I think maybe what's not talked about so much is how determined and how resilient you really, really need to be. And I think in order to be that resilient, you need an unwavering belief in what it is that you're setting out to do, what you're trying to accomplish. I think that you need to surround yourself with a team of people who are equally as resilient and, have the same unwavering belief that you do. And I also think that people need to be prepared to build things brick by brick. And again, I'm only speaking from my experience, but the big win moments are rare, if ever. It's not coming into the office and scoring a goal in the FA Cup final. That rarely happens, if ever. The truth is, it's about marginal gains. It's about building the business one step at a time, laying solid foundations brick by brick. And it's not until maybe you take a step back and you realise what you've accomplished and what's been built that you kind of start recognising some of that achievement. And I think that there are probably many founders out there who would be lying to themselves if they haven't at some point sat there wishing they were an employee, because I certainly have on many occasions.
Well, thanks again, Ben, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.